And that brings me to my next question. Why do you think that plus size fashion needs to be separated from the rest of fashion?
In which regard?
Well, in regard that so many stores don't carry
Hmm.
plus sizes, and that many brands tend to have a separate line just dedicated to plus size.
Well, I think what's important about that is like, we're still fighting a couple of things. You're fighting the assumptions and the classism that plus size, in fashion kind of brings, right? So then you have like the elitism they don't want to be associated with. So there are a lot of brands that are still not even catering to the plus size market. And then you have brands who have tried, but they don't know how to perfect the fit, right? Because the schools are only just starting to actually start talking about inclusive fashion, whether it be plus size, the queer fashion, like the inclusivity of gender neutral clothing. So you're looking at all these different, when you look at like the flow of like in education, they're just starting to bring these in. So now you have like the focus on fit and patterns and grading. So they get that education so that they're not like, oh, we don't know what to do. And then you have, so then it starts to remove all these barriers, right? So when you look at the growth that has started to happen, like there used to be a point where some people couldn't even show their senior classes plus size collection because, and there's still to this day people who um, coach or tell their students not to do a plus line because they don't see the viability. But now when you have brands like Torrid who just went public and who put and articles that are really digging into the size and the potential opportunity in plus, you're able to now see like, oh, okay, there's real money to be had here. So many brands are now taking another look at, or kind of figuring out how to approach, how to include, how to do things right. And then you're also seeing a push from the consumer side of even a broader size inclusivity in terms of, rather than just going up to a 3X, right? So there's a lot of different inputs that affect like where and how things are moving along. And that is interesting to see like where we have moved from and where we are today versus where we're going to be tomorrow in the grand scheme. So there's a couple of different elements that kind of affect the total output in terms of access. But in terms of the separation, right now we're still just fighting for like the options, right? And so, or inclusion. And then now with the pandemic, forcing a lot of folks having to go online, it's allowed some brands to get a little bit more bolder with their, with like, okay, we're going to try, because they also realize their bottom line is hurting. So they're like, oh my God, well, maybe we can cater to the plus size person because we need to capture some money. So, it's a strategy for these brands, but they don't realize that this is our reality. And the plus size consumer is naturally more savvy because she has been underserved, or they have been underserved for so long that they can suss out when someone's like, oh, this is just a cash grab. They don't really care. So how do we better, how do I say, how do we better position ourselves, or better kind of utilize our collective voice to impact change? So that is why I'm like, we need our, like, people are like, oh, don't call it plus size. Like, no, that's what it is. It's just a descriptor, just like how they have petites and tall and juniors. Does not mean it's a qualifier of your worth. So it's necessary because we're still trying to find all of the clothes. Like, where can I go in here? Where can I shop? And unless it's like inclusive marketing from top to bottom, like, I'm gonna go look for your plus size section.
I have so many thoughts in my mind right now, because I studied fashion for 2 years and a half, and all of the things that you mentioned were real. Choosing the fashion figures to draw the sketches, and instructors telling you, make them skinnier, make the legs skinnier, when like anatomically, like that girl couldn't stand up with those skinny legs.
Right, right.
and then trying to experiment with plus size designs, and then all the dress forms being size 9 or lower. So like you cannot do plus size because we don't have the dress forms to do that. And if I could go back in time, like I have the knowledge now to confront those people and say how we really need this, because that's where it all starts, right? In education, in saying how clothing should look like, in saying how we must acknowledge all different types of bodies, because it's not real, right? Like this very restrictive sizing measurements that people are telling us that we should follow. 40% or more than 40% of people in the US are obese. So
67% are size 14 plus. 67% of women are size 14 and up.
so it's really not a minority.
It's I like to call it a silent majority.
It is a silent majority that is growing. And to the other part of which I think is something that you talk in your blog, how plus size fashion is different, because it's not just about making parallel lines in the pattern to make the design bigger. It needs to be different. You need to study the anatomy of the plus size body to make it look appealing, which is something that can be misleading in so many online stores, because maybe they carry the plus sizes, but in the model and the photo is size 2, so you don't really see how the design would look like in your body, right? That's another
Right.
sort of
Right.
passive aggression. Or
And it's the representation that we're always calling out for, and understanding patterns and fit and grading. Like there are experts within the plus space who know how to do these things, who can talk to these things. So then when the brands say, oh, we don't know, it's like, well, no, did you really look hard enough? Because there are folks here. So it's a matter of, how committed these brands are to this space, and understanding that you have to approach her differently in order to make inroads differently.